As I said, we are on the heels now of this past weekend's UFC Fight Night. Grasso versus Schevchenko 2, a.k.a. Noche UFC, even though it was not in a Spanish-speaking country. It was in Las Vegas. I believe it was at T-Mobile. But it was coinciding pretty much with Mexican Independence Day. And yeah, it was at T-Mobile. So, with the theme, it was Noche UFC, featuring a lot of Mexican and Latin American fighters. And the main event was Alexa Grasso defending her women's flyweight title against Valentina Shevchenko in their rematch. But neither one of these women are who we are putting on the marquee this week. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Judge Mike Bell, who this past weekend, in front of 18,000 plus at the T-Mobile Arena, scored the what round was it?
Round 5.
Round 5, a 10-8 in favor of Alexa Grasso. In doing so, a single judge with one single point, meaning instead of scoring the round 10-9, he scored a 10-8 for Grasso. So a single judge with one single point literally affected the outcome of this fight, because if he scored that round simply a 10-9 for Grasso, Valentina Shevchenko is once again and new women's flyweight champion. But because Mike Bell scored that round at 10-8, this fight ended up being a draw. And that means that Grasso retains the belt in a draw. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on Mike Bell and his decision, and what did you see in that fifth round, and do you agree or disagree with the fact that it was scored 10-8?
I mean, I certainly disagree, as I hope anyone with a brain would disagree. I'll talk about the fight first, I guess, and then I'll circle my way back to this moron. I will say for Mike Bell, he's never a guy involved with these bad scorecards. So I guess first time for everything, though, because this was a bad one. Anyway, let me do the fight first. It was a fantastic fight. It gave us everything throughout those 5 rounds, and it deserved to have a winner. Both girls left it out there. There were huge momentum swings back and forth at different times. You know, Valentina comes out. She sets the tone. She wins the first. Then in the second, you have Alexa dropping her and swarming her, but Valentina finds the takedown to kind of retake the control. Then round 3, she just continues it. You get a grappling exhibition from Valentina in that round. Round 4, razor close back and forth that should have ended up deciding the fight. And then round 5, you have this scenario where it seems like the challenger is kind of running away with it and is going to be the new champion. And then, you know, another mistake from Valentina, and the champ finds a way to shift the momentum back and take that round. I mean, it had it all. It had so many swings, and every round was clear except the 4th. You know, Valentina won 1-3. Alexa won 2-5. And the 4th was really close, and it should have decided this fight. And it could have gone either way that round. Like, I wouldn't have hated the scorecards going to Alexa. I wouldn't have hated them going to Valentina. So I guess that helps slightly, because it's not like it was 100% that Valentina was going to be champion, because that round was tough. You know, in that round, Valentina jumps out to an early lead. Alexa responds with this flurry of knees that were all legal. So many people are saying they're illegal. They were not illegal. The rules in Vegas are that if you have a hand down, it needs to be a weight-bearing hand, and it very certainly was not weight-bearing in the slightest. So they were all legal, and then she gets this big slam. But then Valentina responds again after that, and Grasso finishes with a sub-attempt. I mean, the round's all over the place, and both girls had moments. And it was really hard to call. On MMA Decisions, you can see that 12 experts to 11 had it for Grasso. It was that tight, 12 to 11. And the public was basically even on MMA Decisions too. So it was that damn close. It should have come down to that. It should have decided the fight. You would have had either the story of, you know, Alexa like on the verge of losing and Valentina making yet another mistake that lets Alexa keep her title, or you have the story of Valentina adjusting to Alexa's jab and having success in the striking again where she didn't really have it in the first fight, and showing her grappling advantage again, and retaking her title. And in this instance, it would have been the latter because, as you said, 2 of the 3 judges scored round 4 for Valentina, and she would have been champion again. But instead, we get this utter, inexplicable nonsense from Mike Bell. 10-8 in round 5 is an awful, awful, awful score. There is no defending it. As I said, it's inexplicable. The round was no more clear for Grasso than round 2 was, or than round 3 was for Schevchenko with the grappling exhibition that she had in that round. I mean, there are no grounds to score that round 10-8. Valentina was winning the round clearly for 3+ minutes prior to making the mistake. And even after she made the mistake, she was never hurt. She never ate any big shots. Yeah, there were a couple sub attempts and some good punches, but none were close to hurting her, getting her out of there or anything. There's no justifiable way to score that round of 10-8. And yet, because MMA going to find a way to MMA, that is what we got, and we are left with this bullshit instead of celebrating what was a fantastic fight from both women.
The only round that was split on the judges' scorecards was the 4th round. Rounds 1, 2, 3, and 5, all 3 judges had the same winners of those 4 rounds.
Yeah, and they were all clear.
The only other difference is that Mike Bell scored round 5 10-8 instead of 10-9. Omar, your thoughts on the fight as a whole and on the 5th?
So before we get into the scorecards, I was actually really impressed with Alexa Grasso in this performance. I know she
man.
I think she still had some opportunities on the ground when it came to the control and things like that. We also have to give credit really quick to Valentina as well, who apparently fought 4 rounds with a broken hand.
That's right. I didn't even say that. Yep.
Which, if you've seen recent pictures in the last couple hours, the last few hours on this Tuesday evening, you will see how jacked that finger really is. This whole thing here is effed. Like the whole thumb/palm area, absolutely jacked. So she's apparently going to be out, by the way, for at least 3 months as far as no contact is concerned. So she's not even going to start training until probably 2024 at this point. So we should probably keep that in mind when it comes to what's next for these women. But back to the fight. I was really impressed with Alexa Grasso. Her hands I've never seen her hands look that good. And she's looked, she's always been a good fighter. She's always been a very elite fighter as far as her skill set and her IQ is concerned when it comes to the fight. But her hands were on point. She was not afraid to scrap. She was getting punches in, and I think she did a lot more damage standing up this fight than she did in the last.
She knocked her down.
But even without the knockdown, there were a lot of punches that were landing clean on Valentina's face. And we don't really see very often people being able to land things like that cleanly on Valentina. And I thought Alexa Grasso did a fantastic job. It was a rough fight. It was a tough fight. Valentina is a person who's very smart in the cage and knows how to win fights. Very close ones, but she does know how to win them. And, we were getting into moments in a lot of these rounds where, Alexa made a good accounting of herself, but it was clear who won the rounds. The 4th round, like we're talking about, was the only one that I think was split up in the air. I did have that one for Grasso. A lot of people had that one for Schevchenko as well. The 5th round is crazy. It's absolutely wild. As much as I'm glad Alexa didn't lose her belt, that card is crazy. And it's hard to imagine that the reason that was a 10-8 round wasn't because the dude felt a certain way about how his card already was and decided to just make it so that, Alexa didn't lose her belt, right? Maybe he felt by the end of that fight that Alexa had actually won that fight, or at the very minimum didn't lose that fight, and decided that because his scorecard would have been one that didn't help her in that moment or didn't reflect how he felt about the fight, he made a decision to do something that did. We've heard this be, I feel like, a kind of like one of those urban legends, right? Like we've heard of this kind of behavior with judges in the past. I don't think I've ever seen it so goddamn blatant before, or at least to the point where it's the first thought that came into my mind when that scorecard went off was like, oh, he must have thought he fucked up and didn't want Alexa Grasso to lose, so he must have put just a random score on there that would mess it all up. And I think that, the 10-8 round, I think in his mind, if it was Shevchenko, he basically didn't want anything to do with making the decision on what happened in that fight.
How could that be, though? Like, that's literally his job, is just to score the fight.
I don't disagree. And to be fair, there's a little bit of tinfoil hat here going on, right? Like, we don't really fucking know. But the feeling of it, the way that that conclusion came about, the fact that nobody agrees, like there is nobody that agrees with this 10-8 round. It's difficult to think then if it's not based on the merit of the fight and what happened, then what is another explanation for why he was giving her a 10-8 round? That's the first one that comes to my mind, and it seems like I wasn't the only one who came to that conclusion.
And dude, guys, I am somebody who is an enthusiastic supporter of the loosening up of the 10-8 and the more using it a little bit more liberally than it used to be. But then we run into this kind of situation where it's just kind of like, that was not a 10-8 round. I mean, really, the takedown and ground control by Grasso, we're really talking about 2 submission attempts. She attempted a guillotine, and then she attempted a rear naked choke, or vice versa, or in reverse order, right?
It was a rear naked. And
what
then
was first?
Was the guillotine the next one? Was it a guillotine? It was rear naked first.
Okay. Then it was a guillotine.
What was late? Was it a guillotine? I guess. I can't remember now.
Because she got out of it and she scrambled and she wound up in a guillotine attempt.
Yeah, but it was a couple sub attempts. It was some solid, punches, like rain down style punches, but none of them were like big, like, oh, big one. None of them were that.
And to be fair,
she was clearly down in the round after 3.5 minutes, like clearly down. There was no way that round wasn't being scored for Valentina.
Right.
And I think the other thing is Valentina kind of had a point where she was talking about how 10-8 rounds are basically like completely destroying the fighter. And I think we've gotten past that a little bit. I don't think that I completely agree with her take. I think that was the former use of the 10-8 round was basically near-death experience in the cage.
Correct.
But at the same time, even with that tidbit in mind and not necessarily agreeing with Valentina's take, I still don't think that was a 10-8 round. I don't even think it was close to a 10-8 round.
No, I agree.
Clear.
When I heard the 47-47, my mind shot back thinking, okay, wait, what other rounds did I score for Grasso? And I was like 2 and 4. Okay, which of those could have been the 10-8? Like I didn't even consider that it was round 5 that was the 10-8. And then because I couldn't fully remember those other rounds. And then once I thought them through, I was like, wait a second, like none of these could have been 10-8. Like the fact of it being round 5 didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah.
I even went to round 2. I was like, all right, she had the knockdown in round 2. Did he give her a 10-8 because of a knockdown? Like, yeah, it made no sense.
This result makes me think of that idea that I've heard a few people mention before of, well, 2 things. A, for live scoring, even though this is at the 5th round, so it wouldn't matter.
Solved it, yeah.
And B, interviewing the judges after the fight if it's some
100%.
crazy shit like this of like, Mike Bell, what'd you see in that 5th round that made you think it was a 10-8? Microphone in his face. I don't. It wouldn't solve anything.
He would not be able to offer an explanation. Like,
Have you heard about Ariel having been trying to do that for the longest time now? He's contacted Nevada Athletic State Commission. He's contacted other commissions. I think California was the other one that he also contacted about reaching out to judges to have them explain some of these scorecards or whatever, like when it happens. And he makes the point of like, I can talk to everybody. I can talk to Dana White, or I guess he probably specifically can't talk to Dana White, but reporters can talk to Dana White and they can like ask everybody involved in the process and things like that, and they can talk to anybody. But for whatever reason, the guys that are actually making the decisions on who wins and loses in these fights are all of a sudden like cast into the shadows, and no one can talk to them about it or ask their opinion. Yep. And I don't think it should be that way. And I think
what is wrong with that?
Well, so the only reason that Ariel has said that he has been given by people, I think specifically in Nevada, it sounds like California was a little bit more like, you do what you want. You can ask them what they want. I don't know if they're going to tell you anything, but I'm not going to stop you. Nevada Athletic Commission put the kibosh on it before it even got to whether the judges wanted to talk or not. They were like, no, we're not going to do that, and it's not something we plan on doing right now. And they didn't really give an explanation as to why, other than we want to protect them. They don't make a lot of money doing what they do. It was an excuse or an answer that that didn't make any sense to me. It just
That's a
sounded
joke.
like random facts that he was throwing out. So
Protect them. They have all the power. They are deciding
the state.
who gets paid, who is champion. They're deciding everything. You want to protect them? Absolutely not. Like when you have that kind of power, you have to explain yourself.
Amen. Totally. They're the state. Like no one. There's no one above them.
This is one of the most I would ever have loved to hear, which is funny because if he just scored the fourth for Grasso and she won anyway, I wouldn't have even complained.
Right.
But he
It
didn't.
would have been like,
And-
oh, that was a weird score for the fifth round, but Grasso won.
Yeah. It's like she
Totally.
would have won either way. All right. I mean, but still, like, I just there is nothing he could say. Like, there's not even a
Right.
theory I could come up with that he could spit out of his mouth to explain why he viewed that as a 10-8.
Agree.
at
And
least
it's a
not
shame,
one
too.
that's legit anyway. I'm sure he's got a reason.
Maybe he
but
could
not
have.
one that's
he
legit.
might. I can imagine that he could say something about that he thought those submission attempts were very close, and that to him was dominance and
Use your eyes then. Like, I really think Omar might have a point that like that fight ended and like pride style. He was like, man, kind of
Right.
feel like Alexa won that fight overall. Maybe I'll just give her a 10-8 so she keeps her belt.
But of course, the three judges don't see each other's scores, so the other two guys could have
But-
scored it for Shevchenko.
Oh, for sure.
He
Yeah.
could have, but then it wouldn't have been his decision, is what I'm saying. Like, the fact that he scored it a draw means that he put it on the other two judges to figure it out for them damn selves. Because I'm pretty sure
Right,
he
and
knew
if one of
that
them
they
had
weren't going to
Grasso,
score a
she
draw.
would keep the belt.
So you're saying
Right.
that that's the judging equivalent of like passing the buck?
Yeah.
Yeah, and because it now only
Maybe.
now
If
only
it's a
one-
legit draw, it's a legit draw. But do you feel like that was a legit draw by the end of the fifth round from a scoring perspective, not from a pride perspective, but from a legit round for round scoring perspective? I don't think anybody can make the argument that that was a draw on points. You can't.
If it was a pride style fight, and they were like, you know what, that fight was super close. I'm gonna fight that. I'm gonna score that fight overall as a draw. I would be like kind of okay with that. But
Do you know
in
what-
the must system, the 10-point must system, you got to score by round, and that
But you
fifth
know what's
round was
funny?
not a 10-8.
You know what's funny?
Correct.
You could have scored round 5 10-9 for Grasso and round 4 10-10. But no one ever scores 10-10s. But round 4 was
No
that
one.
close that it could have been a draw that
Round
way.
4 was super close,
Which would have been way
No
more of
one-
a respectable draw than this way.
yes.
No one will ever score a fight 10-10.
No,
ever.
no one
And I'll
uses
tell you
10.
and
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. If you watch the Rose and Carlos Esparza fight, if
I was
you
just
didn't
gonna say
score that fight,
Yeah.
that first round, or probably even more than that first round, a 10-10, you're never scoring another fight 10-10 for the rest of your life.
Yeah, we
that
don't
was
get
the standard, and no one did it. Not one.
Yep.
It's to echo a point Omar made. It's a damn shame because this was a great fight, man. It was a great championship fight between two of the best fighters in the world. You know?
Oh yeah. oh yeah.
Connection issues over here. You guys still hear me fine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well,
I'm off the stand.
let's talk about where these ladies go from here. Run it back. A lot of people were saying, does it make sense? Yes? No? Mark, what do you think?
Run it back. I don't care. I don't care that it's going to hold up the division. Yes, it sucks, but there's no other choice here. And I get it. There's this curveball now of Valentina being hurt. It does seem like she could be back to training in like maybe not even 3 months. So, I don't know how soon Grasso's looking to get back in there. If it is going to fuck things up because Valentina's hurt, then maybe you don't have a choice. But if it works out where you can schedule this thing, you got to do it. And it does help that you have two contenders waiting in Erin Blanchfield and Manon Fior, because now they can just fight each other. It's not like you're leaving one person out in the cold. Like if it's me, I put all four of them on the same card. But put
Hell yeah.
Blanchfield and Fior on the same card. Now you have a backup built in if Schevchenko drops out or Grasso drops out for any reason, and you straighten out the whole division on the same night.
Omar, what do you think?
So I'm also kind of on the rematch train. I just don't know how that's going to look from a timing perspective just because of Valentina's injury. I don't know how much of it is up to Grasso, to be honest. I think she does have a pretty good following when it comes to the Latin American crowd, especially the Mexican crowd. And Valentina, to be honest, has never been a particularly big sell, which is why a lot of her fights have either been fight nights or they've been, co-headlining a really big event or something like that. But she's never, to my understanding, I don't think she's ever carried a pay-per-view on her back before. And I don't think she brings in that kind of spark, I guess. So from a business perspective, I don't know really what that looks like. Maybe they're going to want to throw Grasso in there with somebody else that makes sense. I think, Mark, you were saying were you trying to put Aaron Blanchfield and Fior together and see what happens?
Yeah, I said I'd put all 4 of them on the same card. That way they're on the card already if Grasso or Shevchenko fell off, so one of them would be able to step in. But yeah, I'd book both fights on the same card.
So just considering the time frame, let's say we don't put Valentina. Let's say Valentina's out. I would say minimum spring of 2024, right? Just considering the fact that she has to heal, she has to get surgery. I don't know if I mentioned that. So she does have to get surgery on her hand. That was confirmed.
Do you listen when I speak?
Oh, I didn't hear what you said. My bad. So,
just say no.
Yeah, I didn't hear. I wasn't listening.
I talk about the surgery, the recovery timeline.
Yeah. So basically what I'm getting at is instead of putting all 4 of them, I would imagine that you should probably, in my opinion, I would just put Fior and Blanchfield first and sooner. That way we have an actual number 1 contender.
How soon could they fight though? Like they
didn't really take a lot of damage in their last. I would imagine so. Maybe even January though. I mean they.
But then when's a title fight happening?
I mean, I would do it at the beginning of the spring. And if Valentina's ready, then give her the rematch. If she's not ready, then have Alexa fight the next person.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I see, because I was going to say, wouldn't Valentina be ready by then? But you're just saying sort out the other one first in case. Yeah, all right. That's right. Fair. I can see that. I can see that.
We went in a roundabout way there, but we got there.
Yeah.
We got there.
Yes, I get that.
Okay. I mean, what else is there to discuss about this fight? It sucks when either a judge or a ref kind of steals the spotlight. I don't think Mike Bell was trying to steal the spotlight. I mean, to your point, Omar, it's like he was trying to pass the buck and he didn't want it to be his thing, but it was, like I said at the beginning of this, literally 1 point determined the outcome of this fight, man, and that sucks. It just does, because it's so crazy that on the one hand, if I didn't see the fight and I was like, guys, I'm busy, I can't watch the fights, but just tell me the results and give me the gist of the fight. And if you told me like it was a great fight, it was back and forth, Schevchenko got dropped in the 5th round, she got put in a couple of what looked like tight submissions, but overall, like, she won her rounds as well. It was a great back and forth fight, ended in a draw. I'd be like, oh my God, that's so crazy. So I'm not super upset that it ended in a draw. I am super upset that it was determined through this avenue.
I agree.
Right. Yep. I agree as well.
Yeah.
Because it was a great fucking fight, man. I love these two fighters
was
so much, dude. So much. I was so impressed by Grasso, dude. You're right. I mean, I feel like she's improved. And then she clearly came into this fight with so much more, even more confidence, I feel. Her stand-up looked incredible. And the last time somebody stood toe-to-toe with Schevchenko, I think, was Nunes. If I'm not mistaken. Everybody else, Schevchenko just gets the better of.
I thought Schevchenko had so much more success in the striking in this fight than in the first fight.
Really?
Yeah. I thought Grasso handled the striking in the first fight, and that Schevchenko had to resort to the grappling. Whereas here I felt like Schevchenko was doing fine everywhere.
Funny. I guess I have to go back and rewatch that first fight.
Maybe I think there was a little bit more stand-up in this fight from Schevchenko that I thought Alexa Grasso looked great in the hands. I actually thought she was getting the better of her in a lot of the exchanges, but I think there was more stand-up time in this fight than I think the ground fight. Did you see a spinning back kick in that fight? Because I don't think I did.
Why? Who got a spinning back kick?
I'm talking about Valentina, how she does her spinning back body kick.
Do it. Yeah, no, she did not. She stayed.
She didn't,
far
right?
Away from, yes, 100%.
And so that's the thing that I was talking about last week, was kind of having to adapt to it, right? But she's changing up. She's forcing Alexa Grasso is forcing Schevchenko to change her tools. Shevchenko has thrown that spinning back kick to the body in every fight that girl has been in that I can remember. And this is the first time I have never seen her throw that kick. And it goes to show you that she knows Alexa Grasso is not the one to fuck with. And it was a great fight. I loved every minute of it.
It's just crazy. See, we're not talking about some of the fight stuff because we're so focused on the scorecard. But how crazy is it that last fight she made this mistake and got her back taken and choked out? And this fight, when she was on her way to winning round 5 in the title, she made another mistake and got her back taken. Didn't get choked out here, but like almost the same shit in a different way. But like, that's the danger of that head and arm throw. And you always see it in women's MMA. They love the head and arm throw, but that's the risk of it. Yeah. It can go.
Dude, that happened in that 5th round. You're right. Like she went for the head and arm and she got taken down and all right into a submission basically. And I was like, God, does Alexa Grasso just have Shevchenko's number, man?
Yep. Shevchenko was definitely salty at the end of that fight. I don't think we need to blame Mexican Independence Day for
she wasn't blaming the holiday. She was blaming like the hometown advantage, basically.
I mean,
advantage.
The vibe.
But she was, it was the day and the night and the vibe and, Mexican UFC basically. And she was like, I wasn't feeling that. And I was like, I don't know if it's all that. It was one douchebag that just like had the scorecards all fucked up. Like it wasn't all that.
It's as though she was, it was like this was an away game for her, is almost the sense that she had, and the refs were like skewed?
Yeah.
Slanted?
Swayed?
But you're right, dude. That was some Himalayan sea salt right there in that interview. She came right out. She said the quiet part out loud. Okay, in the interest of time, let us move on to the